We're live from Auckland Park in Johannesburg. A happy International Workers' Day to you. Some call it Labor Day, some call it May Day, whatever you want to call it. It all boils down to a day set aside in order to celebrate the working class. Prime example, these fine men and women who take it to the max every day and night in order to deliver the best possible product. But the question is, do they have enough reason to celebrate? And in terms of the South African labour market, what are some of the gains? What are some of the challenges? But most importantly, what are the solutions? That is what we will be discussing here tonight. Why, you ask? Give you one more reason. It's topical. A very good evening to you, South Africa, and those watching around the world. My name is Blain Herman, and this is It's Topical. We have a packed program for you, as always. Our central voice is here on the program, our digital audience. They will be joining us very soon. They are from all corners of South Africa. There they are. Thank you very much indeed, digital audience, for joining us. We will be engaging with you shortly. They are joining us from around the country, as I said, via Zoom, with pertinent views on the issues of the day. Now, to our question of the week, and this is very important. Unemployment in sharp focus on Workers' Day. We are currently sitting with the highest jobless rate since 2008. And this is when we started getting the comparable data, 35.3%. That's the official unemployment rate in the fourth quarter of 2021. When we look at the expanded unemployment rate, that's sitting at just over 46%. What about youth unemployment? Over 66% in the fourth quarter of 2021. Now, I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, but what I'm trying to do is paint a picture in terms of the current state of play. And hopefully, from these concerning numbers, we're going to get some solutions during tonight's program, which leads us to our question of the week. And we're asking you, how can South Africa beat the record-breaking unemployment rate? It's a simple question, complicated answer. Walk with me while we get ready for the roundup. Look, the National Development Plan, it talks about the goal of eradicating poverty and reducing inequality in South Africa by 2030. But it leaves us, what, about 8 years to go? Do we have enough time? What needs to be put in place now in order to get to that goal, to achieve that goal, to get to a better place? Please have your say regarding the burning issues of the past week. Interact with us on all our social media platforms at It's Topical SABC. Later on, we'll also be taking a call. 011-714-5958 is the number to dial. Please, I'd love to hear your voice right here on the program. Stay tuned for that. Now, time for your roundup. All right, let's start with the stories that made headlines this week. During the murder trial of Senzo Miwa, the defense lawyer, advocate Malisela Tefo, was arrested for contempt of court after failing to appear before the Hillbrow Magistrates Court twice. This came after he was arrested in 2020, we understand, on charges of common assault and trespassing. Talking to the media after his release on 10,000 Rand bail, Advocate Tefo said that this is a ploy to detour him from the Miwa case. Now, he made allegations that there are big and serious people who are behind this arrest. Take a listen to what he had to say.
The agencies, NPA is involved, SAPS is involved. They are involved, these agencies. I cannot individualize, but there are those seniors who are very much giving the orders that are considered and taken serious.
Now to the main story of the day. The ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa was forced to abandon COSATU's main May Day celebrations at the Royal Bafokeng Stadium in the Northwest province. This after some workers staged a protest. Now the ANC President was set to speak. Workers, they said, they are tired of empty promises. They say the ANC-led government has failed and refused to honour the 2018 collective bargaining agreement. They blame the governing party for allowing the matter to be ventilated in the courts, which ultimately ruled in favour of the employers. Well, as you know, Workers' Day is marked all over the world. It's all about celebrating workers' rights and, as a reminder, one would say, of the critical role played by trade unions in defending workers' interests. Now, various leaders gave speeches today to commemorate Workers' Day here in South Africa. Speaking in Middelburg, Mpumalanga, was Julius Malema, the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, and this is what he had to say. Take a look.
Unemployment in South Africa is scary. So many young people unemployed. Even those who are going to school, they are not sure what's going to happen to them. They are just going to school because they are disciplined, but their future doesn't look bright.
So the graduates are part of our digital audience as well. We're going to get their views. Julius Malema there asking the question of how confident the youth are in terms of joining the workforce after completing their studies. So for the Word on the Street feature this week, we went out and asked students at Vaal University of Technology that very same question. And this is what they had to say. Take a look.
Good evening, South Africa. Little like I Tato, get the first day of Vaal University of Technology. Course I get financial information system. Get confidence enough for get all I'm saying at Federal School because of course I get choosy thing. Get one get told very demanding.
I'm doing my third year studying cost and management accounting. I'm not confident or after I graduate I'm gonna get a job because number one, the university it's least ranked in SA, you see. So Banaba Kanambo, Northwest, your Wits, your Stellenbosch, they'll probably get first preference when it comes to job opportunities.
I am not so confident about finding a job after graduating because jobs in the public relations department are scarce.
I am a first-year student studying financial information systems. I have studied and made sure that I choose a course that I am comfortable with and that I will make sure that I find work after I finish my course.
The one challenge is graduate and the kumbero yanga ya hore ara richikonadzera rine kare po chikiri chine ra do kono ditela zvitu risako dependa ka dzi company ngauri maduvano oso ndo to imai uri nditomini ka dzimwe company dzive dzone dzine dzampa chikiri kana uri ndikono odimela uri ndishume khawo.
Workers' Day mina ngibone ipoka kakhulu. Baningi abantwana abanama-degree, abanama-diploma, abahlele emakhaya abangasebenzi.
South Africa manje sinyeyi. Bana bathola ndikolo, babakela ndikolo bathola msebenzi. Ibana bani babatho bani ba government ba udimo bale. Ba rona fatshe mona re kena sekolo mahala, ba kena sekolo mahala. So nna ke bone hore ba tla thola msebenzi nako e tlang. Ai South Africa ya re baizisa man. Hey, bye bye.
I always say these are real stories from you, and hopefully they will be picked up by the role players, those that make the decisions to streamline the strategy. That's the hope. We are going to take a quick break, our conversation with our digital audience. Next. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. Please have your say on our question of the week. We're asking you, it's a simple question, but it's a complicated answer, isn't it? How do we beat the unemployment rate here in South Africa? It's record-breaking. 35.3% is currently sitting at. So that's our question. Please engage with us on the various social media platforms at It's Topical SABC. You can also send us your WhatsApp 078-459-1819. Also, please give us a call 011-714-5958. And now it's a public holiday, but we appreciate your thoughts right here on It's Topical. I want to get you some global perspective, and in particular, one of the groupings that South Africa belongs to. It's called the BRICS nation, and it's basically a grouping of emerging nations and emerging economies, rather. So this is how South Africa fares currently. South Africa is, remember, the highest unemployment rate out of the BRICS nation, sitting at, as I mentioned, 35.3%. Brazil is next with 11.2%. India 8.1%. China just over 5%. And Russia, in the news, just over 4%. So that's how it stands with regards to the BRICS nation. I want to move on to this now. Some fast facts on South Africa's labor market. And as you can see, we are sitting with the highest unemployment rate since the start of the quarterly labor force in 2008. And of that, say 7.9 million unemployed persons in in the fourth quarter of 2021. Now, out of the 7.9 million employed or unemployed persons, just over 51% had education levels below matric, followed by those, as you can see, with matric at 38.6%. Now, just over 2%, this is very interesting, just over 2%, 2.4% of unemployed persons were graduates, while 6.9% had other tertiary qualifications as the highest level of education. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what we're dealing with here, the state of play in South Africa. Let's introduce a central voice on It's Topical. It's the digital audience, as always, on a Sunday. They give us their perspective. We bring in the role players. We get some answers. Digital audience, thank you very much indeed for your time. Welcome to It's Topical. It's an important issue that we're talking about, isn't it? Let's bring in, we've got among our digital audience, the union leaders as well. Zwelinzi Mavavi is with us as well. Mr. Vavi, thank you very much indeed for your time. Let's start off with you with regards to where we are, 35.3% unemployment rate. Is there any hope? And if so, how do we get to that light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, I will start correcting you, my leader. Unemployment rate in South Africa, when you count workers who are too discouraged and or who have given up searching for employment in the past 2 weeks, is not 35% or 36%. It goes to 46% plus. And it's nearing a 50% mark. In fact, in 2 of our provinces, unemployment have reached 55%. For black women, African women, it has reached more than 51%. For the young people below the age of 24 years, it has now reached a staggering 77%. And it's the worst unemployment rate amongst all industrializing and industrialized countries of the world. Our youth unemployment is the worst in the whole world. And we, in terms of inequalities, are also occupying that #1 spot in the whole world. And we champion of all of the negative things. Is there hope? And the hope is disappearing amongst our young people. More and more of them are being trapped in a secondary pandemic, drugs pandemic. They are being recruited by the drug lords to fight their terrain wars. And they are being trapped into crime and life of hopelessness. And we constitute what we normally call a ticking time bomb, which will implode in our face. We saw that happening already in July. Already in our country is regarded as the headquarters of protest action. There are 5 major protest actions happening in South Africa every day. And yet our government simply refuses to change the tech. Is refusing to change from its policies that have dismally failed black people, African people, that have dismally failed black women and the young people of this country and workers in general. Most of them now increasingly losing jobs that were regarded as secure and permanent, and which are fast being replaced by precariatory forms of employment, informal sector jobs, even inside the state itself.
Let's test that, Mr. Vavi. Let's bring in Morongwe. Do you feel failed? If you just unmute Morongwe. There you go.
How are you? I'm Rongwe from Valley University of Technology. I'm a holder of sport management diploma, postgraduate diploma in business admin degree, postgraduate diploma in higher education. Actually, I have 3 qualifications from Valley University of Technology. I'm still unemployed. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear. Talk to us, just tell us briefly about your story. How long have you been looking for a job with all these qualifications?
Before I've studied, I've been looking from matric 2001. I had to work, you know, our background as Black people name. So you have to work and raise money to go to school.
Yeah.
So after 10 years, in 2011, I studied sport management at Valley University of Technology.
Yeah.
After I graduated, I did my BTech business admin. Then after that, I did postgraduate diploma in higher education, hoping to find something. So you see, even my age.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so your story is duplicated, and we hear it often in many quarters of South Africa. Let's bring in Connie Mulder, Solidarity. Business, Connie, you heard what Morongwe had to say, looking for a job for about a decade. Business should be at the forefront in terms of creating jobs. Government should create an environment that is conducive for the creation of jobs. Agree or disagree?
No, absolutely agree, Blain. I think it's Morongwe's story is a tragedy that we've seen unfold several times. I myself drive past, I think it's a builder's warehouse on the way to work, which I'm very grateful that I have. And the amount of people on that corner just break my heart every morning. It's got people with dress. You can see these are people who are looking for dignity, and they're standing there with a tiler or a plumber, a little placard with no job. Now this is almost criminal. What is happening in this country? To add to Mr. Vavi's numbers, we're not only sitting at that level of unemployed. 4 out of 5 people who are unemployed have been unemployed for more than a year. In South Africa at the moment, I think it's quarter 2, the last quarter of 2021, we had 14.5 million people employed. In 2008, we also had 14.5 million people employed. So we're 14 years back after COVID-19. The difference being, of course, that the labor market has increased from 32 million to 40 million. So we're sitting with a crisis that's completely unsustainable, and I cannot fathom why government is not holding crisis meeting after crisis meeting to solve this. This is going to explode in our faces very quickly. There are about 4 factors that we see that cause this massive unemployment. The way out of it is obviously economic growth, but economic growth is a byproduct of several other things. I think the number one thing that we've got is just simply infrastructure. This includes load shedding. This includes the rail network. It's quite simple. If you can't keep the power on, businesses cannot keep operating and they cannot employ people. So fix Eskom. Last year, June, we had President Ramaphosa announcing that you can now privately generate power, but NERSA has not gave out one permit. So now we see there's a neighborhood in Johannesburg having to fight NERSA to be able to do this. It's unfathomable. Why would you not allow people to generate power to get the economy back on track? And Solidarity, we're planning some action regarding that. The second part would then be quite simply just crime. Is for business and the economy to thrive, we need stable law and order. We need a situation where people can actually know that their business will be there in the morning. We've had a situation in South Africa where the organized crime has gone to such an extent. Construction companies have had to pull out of the country. They can't continue with their construction projects. Now, this is a massive hit to employment. It's a massive hit to the economy. And this is something that government should just simply fix, just get it fixed. And then we've got education as well. As we've seen, we're in a situation where we're not necessarily producing. If you've only got a matric, you're in trouble, quite simply. And I think in 2017, there was a report that came out that said 4 out of 5 grade 10s can't read for comprehension. So that means we're not getting out of this trouble anytime soon until we fix education in this country and get people employable again once you've got matric or at least a qualification.
You're raising a number of important issues. Firstly, growth doesn't equal a job-rich economy. You're talking about corruption and its effect on the GDP. I remember a couple of years ago, Minister Ibrahim Patel was saying that it takes out, corruption that is, about 27 billion from the GDP. Shocking indeed. When you talk about education, do we need to reform the education system? Big questions. Let's bring in Polala Manyama, is also a union member as well. Let me get your Felt and Forest Union workers. Polala, thank you very much indeed for your time. What do you think is at the heart of the issue of unemployment here in South Africa?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's very, very uncertain as such. If you check the stats with regards to 2019 and 2020. You'll find in 2019 it was 29.1%, and in 2020 it goes to 28.74%. And when we check in terms of unemployment in South Africa, the rate has maintained its dismal ascent, climbing from 35.3% to in the fourth quarter of 2021. My intake is that those numbers are incorrect. There is a lot of unemployment, even though who are employed, in my majority of them are not receiving their living wage. E.g., a farm worker. A farm worker, it will take him almost 40 years to buy a mere test 1988 model. You see, it's very, very bad. When you check it in terms of also the government must also regulate the informal trade and also assist them with the funding so that they can able to create more employment in their sectors.
Right. We've got lots to cover. I'm going to get to Topical. Control, do I have enough time or do we need to take a break? All right, let's take a break. I'll come back to Topical as well as our digital audience. We're going to discuss this issue. We're asking the viewers, what can be done in order to beat the unemployment rate in South Africa? It's record-breaking, 35.3%, but that's the official. But you heard from Mr. Vavi himself as well, talking about it could be more. Are we edging in terms of the official figure? Going past this 40% official, I say. We will discuss this with the better minds, digital audience. We're going to try and bring in the Minister of Employment and Labour as well, Thulas Nxesi, after the break. Next. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. It's a program that puts you, our viewers, at the center of the discussions. Please have your say regarding the burning issues of the week. Interact with us on our social media platforms. Later on, as I said, we're going to be taking your calls, so stay tuned for that big question of the week. How can we beat the record-breaking unemployment? That's the question. So today is International Labour Day, also known as Workers' Day in South Africa. And as this country is celebrating and recognizing workers' contribution to the economy, South Africa is also experiencing a high number of job losses. Young people who just obtained their qualifications say it is a struggle to get a job. Our producer, Hlela Mqoko, compiled this report. Take a look.
The 1st of May is the day where South Africa celebrates its workforce. But in 2022, South Africa has seen its highest unemployment rate ever, with 35% of people being unemployed and more than 60% of youth still crying for jobs.
Then I graduated in 2016. Then later in 2018, I went back and registered a BTech degree in journalism again. I then graduated as well for it in 2019. I also get a certificate in public management and governance. It's very funny because me changing all these courses was me trying to put myself, at a better position. I remember when I got that certificate, I was so of the view that now the chances are higher that I might be employed. But nothing changed. I was applying now and again, but without getting any job. End up volunteering. I grew up being someone who loved working with the communities. Then I was then absorbed by the NGO sector. And then ever since, I've been in the NGO. Never worked for the private sector or for government, or even to be called in any interviews in relation to what I've done. I feel like there is too much nepotism in this country. there is a problem in this country whereby the government and the private sector are not willing to work together. There is too much antagonism between the private sector and the government. And this does not interest us as young people who are qualified, went to universities, get these skills, but they find themselves unemployed. The private sector is saying we are willing to help, but government, can you come in terms with us? And it's not happening.
During the State of the Nation address in February 2022, President Ramaphosa said the government will work closely with the private sector to ensure that there are jobs that are being created for South Africans. And this has brought hope in many households. For It's Topical, my name is Thulas in Pretoria.
All right, Hlela, thank you very much indeed for that insight. We have the Minister of Employment and Labour joining us now, Minister Nxesi. He's joining us via Zoom. We also have our digital audience. Remember, digital audience, you can throw in some questions, burning questions if you have. We did brief the Minister that we will be interacting. This is what the show is all about, bringing people to the people in power and getting some answers. Minister, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you and good evening.
All right, the first question, I think I have to get your reaction with what happened near Rustenburg, Northwest today. The ANC president had to abandon the celebrations there. He didn't speak. There was reportedly some striking workers there protesting. They wanted him to address their plight. Minister, workers are angry. They are frustrated. Your reaction to what happened there?
Well, my view is that across the country we had successful rallies. And it was where the workers were reflecting on what they've gained and also talking about the new challenges, including the issue of unemployment. But that was an unfortunate incident which we saw in Rustenburg. But remember that we are in a period where there is bargaining, and collective bargaining leads to strike, and there will always be temperatures going high and tensions. And that's what is happening in that particular region, especially in the mining sector. And the reality, therefore, is that there is that particular anger which is there. That's what the workers were expressing, which is their right to express that particular anger. Also, the issue which was raised was the issue of the public sector unions. Yeah. We've just come back from a public sector summit where we've done a proper assessment of the previous negotiations and even what people call the outstanding year, which has not been paid. And in those discussions, we're able to factor that and said, as we deal with the negotiations now, we'll be able to look into all those issues. But remember, when we're talking about this, we're talking about the economic context in this particular country. We're talking about an economy which was sluggish even before the pandemic, reflecting also structural weaknesses. We are also talking about the economy which was battered by the lockdowns to cap the spread of the pandemic. Yeah. This was at a heavy price. 7% fall in the economic activity and shedding 2 million jobs. And when the economic activity started to recover last year, you remember what happened. We were hit by the July riots, further destroying jobs. And now we've seen the floods where we are seated with serious problems with floods which have devastated and destroyed the lives, infrastructure and jobs. So that is the context within which we're operating internationally.
Yeah, there has been a number of unfortunate incidents that has ripple effect on the economy. But what does that say in terms of the temperature of views on the ground, what you saw today? We're looking at it from a Minister of Employment and Labour. What does that tell you in terms of the faith that workers have in government?
Well, the issue of unemployment is the biggest challenge which all of us are facing. And we are faced with a particular problem, which says, when we are faced with very difficult economic times, what are your options? Is your options to spend more resources to create more jobs, or is your option to increase the salaries for those who are already in the job situation? Yeah. That's what we are dealing with. And the package which we've put as a country, we are looking at the job creation. That package is in terms of what we call economic reconstruction and recovery plan, which has a number of issues which we're looking at. I heard the comment from business. One of the issues we've been talking about, which has contributed, is the issue of the energy security. And unless we deal with that particular issue, our economy is not going to grow. And we have talked about economic stimulus and a number of other issues which we have been able to mention. And how do you make sure that the small businesses grow, because they employ a lot of people. Yeah. So there are a number of packages which have been proposed and which have been discussed together with the various sectors which we are trying to implement. But it's not going to be an event. It is going to be a process. But I do agree that the biggest threat in the country is this mass unemployment.
So this is what we're trying to get at, is that you can have all the policies in place, the structural reform policies that's needed in order to get us to a better place. But the criticism, Minister, is that implementation is the Achilles heel. Let's bring in our digital audience. You can interact with them. These are, let's bring in Topical. I understand Topical is an academic. Just give us your perspective. The Minister is here as well. You can throw some questions. We have the labor unions here as well, so be free to engage. Talk to us about your field and what you hear from students as an academic. Have they totally lost hope, which means that they're not, you know, sharpening their skills in terms of training and education? What's the situation on the ground? You can unmute Topical.
Sorry.
There we go. Go on.
Good evening, everyone. I love the question which you've just raised on what are the problems which students are currently facing. We have many students who graduated a long time ago, and they have decided to come back to university so that they could further their studies with the little hope that they have of finding jobs, even though we know that it is quite an extreme challenge for one to secure a job in our country. Because as young graduates, we find ourselves in the belly of mass unemployment in our country. And it's so quite unfortunate that many students have decided to further their studies so that they could use that as a coping mechanism. You know, one once told me that they decided to come back in the system so that they could be far from problems that are affecting their own mental health. If we were to check the status quo of the mental health of all the unemployed graduates across our country, it is quite disheartening.
Let's bring in somebody that's
heavy.
No, I hear you. I hear you. I want to bring in Simbonile Nzumkulu. I understand that you have an honors degree, Simbonile. Do you have a job? Please unmute as well, Simbonile. Can you hear us? Yeah, go on.
Thank you. So, greetings to everyone. I do have a bachelor's degree in environmental management, and I was hoping that maybe I would secure a job in the municipality. Since I'm from Zimkulu, I would like to actually work in my hometown and perhaps make a difference within water, maybe sanitation, water and sanitation, or maybe even waste management. However, because I've graduated in 2014, I haven't been able to secure a job in the environmental sector or rural land affairs for that matter. So I got to a point where, because of personal issues, depression, related to not finding a job, my family starting to give up on me, like, why did you study? And we don't study for free. We go to varsity, we pay. And so we have to get that remuneration back. However, because I wasn't able to secure a job after 7 years, I decided this year to take a course in teaching. So I'm doing my PGCE now. And I'm now learning the adversities of becoming a teacher. However, that's not my initial dream. So
you
I
have
think it's just an easy way out.
You have to branch out to make a living. Bread and butter issue is not the only issue. It's mental health issues. Veli Mtiani, I'm going to come to you in a bit. Veli's with the SABC Research Department. I'm going to get his take on what he's found. But I want to go to Buyisiwe first. Khumalo from Durban. Buyisiwe, thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight. What's been your experience? You've heard people with honours degree can't get a job, branching out. What's your take?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Unemployment is a real crisis. Drawing from my own experience also as a master's graduate, currently unemployed. And before that, I also had to go back to university to do my postgrad studies because of poverty, if I could say so. And it's easy to be in the university system where you have access to resources such as internet, and you are able to apply. But if you are outside of the university, you're not on the system, you don't even have access to such resources, which are very critical for looking for job or employment. Also, I really like what Honorable Vavi raised about the young people who are now demotivated to look for employment. Also, in my space of work, because right now I'm in the NPO space due to being unemployed as well. You find that most graduates are now demotivated to actually look for a job or look for employment because looking for employment is now also a job on its own. It's time consuming,
and it's costly as well. Looking for a job is costly.
It's very costly. Yes, it's very costly. So that alone, having to apply, having to attend assessments, having to attend interviews and all of that, it's really daunting. And now they're really becoming very much demotivated. And also the issue of entry salaries. When you are a graduate and you have to go through the internship process, and when you are actually calculating the cost of taking that job opportunity against or versus your actual cost of living, you find that even being in that employment gathering experience is actually costing you more, because whatever that you are getting on monthly basis in that internship actually is more than your actual living cost and the transportation cost and so on. So it is a real crisis.
We thank you very much indeed for enlightening us. Veli, let's bring you in before we take our tweets on the matter, on our question of how do we beat unemployment in South Africa at its topical SABC. Common sentiment, Veli, from research in terms of graduates not getting a job. What do you find?
Good evening, Blain, and good evening to the viewers at home. If I may start to say that out of 7.9 million unemployed persons in South Africa in terms of the official rate, because there are two ways we can look at an official rate as well as an unofficial rate, which is expanded rate, which puts unemployment at even higher levels of about more than 46%. But with the official unemployment rate of about 7.9 million people unemployed, SSA reveals that 2.4% of that are people who are graduate. So in other words, if you are educated, especially at a tertiary level, chances of getting a job are high. But another aspect here is that there are many people who go to tertiary institutions, universities, but they do not get proper career guidance. What actually happens is that you find more students flocking into one stream, which usually does not have more job opportunities. And hence, sometimes when they graduate with qualifications that are not relevant to the job market, because South Africa's economic structure is very different. It is not necessarily filled with all kinds of jobs. And then also looking for a job, as Buyisiwe was saying, there is a research that is a survey that was done that reveals that to look for a job in South Africa, it costs about 1,300 rands. However, now let me get into other points. How South Africa
very briefly,
the issue of entrepreneurship is something that government needs to look into. More jobs in South Africa are from the SME sector, and we have realized in the recent years that number of SMEs is dwindling. So it means that the base in which people can get jobs, it is really getting diminished. So what we need more SMEs. We need more education in terms of vocational training. politicians should stay away from promises of job creation. Let me just say one last point.
Yeah, go on,
stay away from promises of job creation, because what is actually needed is not a promise right now, is implementation. The structure of the economy is not absorbing people in the employment. It has to change for people to receive jobs.
I hear you. SMEs, education, key. Let's see what what's the sentiment on social media. We asked you the question, how do we beat this? I want this to be a solution-driven program in terms of, we know the issues now, right? We've got to a point where we get what is the issue, but what are the solutions? Let's take your thoughts on the matter. Donnie M says the chickens are coming home to roost. Workers are always crying, but no one cares. It's promises after promises. The government needs to take stock of their doings. Otherwise, they are losing control of the masses at an alarming rate. Let's put up a few more tweets. Jan Smuts says, dear IMF News, South Africa can kickstart its economy by remove all racist BBBE laws, remove all labor law red tape, and reduce company income tax to 22%. A few more. Black power. We are not happy as workers. Simple. Thomas, this is a proof that these unions are exploiting workers, taking little money from the poor and doing nothing for the workers. People are tired of empty promises. Do you have time for one more? Kuba says, answer to question, just don't vote for the ANC ever again, full stop. All right, we're going to bring in the unions again in a short while, but I want to get the minister's point of view with regard to some of the issues that you raised. Minister Thulas Nxesi is still with us, employment and labor. Sir, I was listening to Julius Malema earlier on, EFF leader, saying that, calling on government to implement a grant or graduate grant. In principle, is that something that you would go for as a minister?
Well, if we have to do that, they must put the proposal, and then through the structures and we debate, we look at the affordability of that. But what we have been saying, there's a point which has been raised about the training, the tendency that we put most of our students into the universities, into what you would call into the general and social, what you call areas in terms of qualification. And we forget about vocational education, whereas the market needs those skills of vocational education. And our plan is to talk about retraining those graduates and refocusing them into certain areas, and it will be easy to do that. But let's hear this motivation for the graduate grants, what it means. But I think there are a number of solutions which have been proposed by the previous speaker. We must be clear that the issue of dealing with energy security, the mass infrastructure can create millions of jobs. The mass public employment programs, investing in the small businesses, because in many countries, 80% of people are employed in the small businesses and in the informal sector. And more vocational education, and retraining and refocusing people to the skills in terms of the modern economy.
Well, let's talk a bit about that. And you heard from a number of people, graduates, people with honors degrees, battling to get a job. What assurances as minister are you giving them in terms of a better future for them in the near future?
No, it doesn't mean that if you have an honors degree or even a master's degree, then you are definitely going to get it. It means you are improving your chances of getting a job depending on where you qualified. And I'm saying if we retrain, work together with the private sector, focus those young people into the areas of needs, then there are bigger chances that they will be able to get the jobs. But part of that says we must also look into the question of the SMEs when we're talking about entrepreneurship, because we must also encourage what we call self-employment from the young people. That's why we need to invest in that particular area. Give the grants, guide them, train them, so that they can be able also to have their own businesses where they can be able to do that.
Minister, I think that alarm that just rang is saying that your time is up. I understand that you need to go, but thank you very much indeed for your time. Appreciate it. Happy Workers' Day to you. Minister Thulas Nxesi there is from the Employment and Labour Ministry. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to engage with our digital audience coming up next. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical now. Imagine the standing ovations, the ululations, the whistling. Of course, you can expect this from, family and friends celebrating you after completing your studies. But then, after the years of toil and sweat on campus, the burning question creeps in. Will I be employed? That's what we're discussing here tonight. Some of the hundreds of the University of Pretoria students who graduated this week are also asking this question. Like many others, they are aware of the soaring unemployment rate among young people of this country. And they, together with their parents who witnessed this educational milestone, are concerned. But there are some also with solutions. Take a look.
With distinction. The biggest fear, honestly, for graduates now is just having the degrees with no employment, and after working so hard to get here, only to not reap the benefits that you were promised.
Sometimes I even send in applications, not even when I want a job, just to see would it be possible to get it, just to see what are the options in the future. So it's definitely a fear.
Just start your own business while you're looking for a job.
To those who want to start businesses and obviously create job opportunities for others, kudos to you and thank you for that. But yeah, we can't all be businessmen.
It's on us to make us stand out, and a good way to do that is to be passionate about what you're doing and really get out there and do as much research as possible to enter the workforce.
I just think people, as soon as you get to university, you need to start networking, being active about seeking employment and getting experience, and then just hope for the best.
In South Africa, there's a problem of unemployment. The rate is too high. But I still believe there will be something for them.
Try to do some of the things like to improve themselves in doing these petty jobs. They don't need to choose.
The best you can do is to support your child all the way, even if there's failures along the way.
To start small and build businesses of their own. That's how the big businesses that are in existence today started, and we need more of those. Otherwise, the unemployment rate will remain.
I really don't imagine myself being at home after so much hard work.
So that's the real situation on the ground, isn't it? That's the real concerns. Let's bring in back our digital audience as well to get their take. Let's go to Moseko from VAL with regards to the issue. What's your point on the discussion we're talking about? What's the solutions here?
Good evening, everyone. I'm a lecturer myself at the Johannesburg Institute of Engineering and Technology. So what we currently do, we're training world-class artisans. But then now, what I'm afraid of is we're creating this pool, which is bottomless, because now all those artisans that I can say annually we train about 60 of them who graduate as artisans, but then they're still sitting at home being unemployed. Now, my question is, who are we actually training them for? Because it seems like our own employment thing is not able to absorb all of them. We're sitting with, when the government gazetted say, artisans is a rare skill in the country, we came up with a solution to train world-class artisans, but still to this day, we're still sitting with a lot of unemployed artisans right now. So my question
I hear your point. I hear your concern. Let's bring in somebody that has some answers. Labor analyst Mamokgethi Molopyane. She joins us now live. Mamokgethi, thank you very much indeed for coming on. Is there a discrepancy between what people study and the skills they develop and compared to the needs of the economy? What's your take?
Good evening. Thanks for having me. Yes, there is quite a discrepancy when it comes to that. But also what we have seen over time is that instead of we have a very flat labor market, what is currently needed is for South Africa to build a very dynamic labor market. At the moment, it is limited. And then we have seen many challenges that we face, even with the pandemic. We have seen that our labor market resilience is limited, and it reflects structural mismatch between labor supply and demand, as we have seen as we have heard the previous guest highlight, that it's interesting that government said there's a need for artisans, yet they are training artisans, but they are not getting jobs. And there lies in the challenge that our labor market seem not to be able to respond. Importantly, I think what needs to happen at the moment, we need a reform strategy. It has to be bold, and the only way that we can reform it is to look at the kind of workforce that is needed and the kind of skills that is needed, and the job opportunities that we are creating, or the jobs that we are creating. It's a pity the minister had to leave, because it's important to highlight that under the ANC government, the ANC has pursued its macroeconomic policies, has always been neoliberal, export-orientated policies that has not prioritized for example, a labor market reform. And so we are reaping the consequence of that.
Let's get a labor or union perspective. Zwelenzima Vavisaftu, how do we close this gap in terms of the skills that are needed in the economy and those that are coming out of tertiary institutions?
Well, our starting point is that this economy is a neo-colonial economy. It's an economy that was designed by the colonialists sitting in Europe as a destination for a mining activity, extraction of our minerals for beneficiation in their respective countries. And that structure of that economy has remained hundreds of years down the line since they discovered the minerals in our country. That's the main structural problem. If you look at our main activities as we speak as to what's happening, our main exports remain dominated by the mining industry, by the export of our mines. That's our first problem. As a result of that, we have an economy that is still dominated by the mining, is now dominated by the finance industry. We have a major casino taking place in our Johannesburg Stock Exchange, where hot money is breaking all the records, accompanied by no employment creation, by deindustrializing in the economy. We have an economy dominated by heavy chemicals. And when you have that problem, you've got to step back and say, where does our education fit here? And I have to go back to the point, because the point of education then becomes part of our structural problem. Our education system is never designed to be liberated from what we inherited from that colonial and apartheid era. And that's why even today, you have our kids not able to compete with the rest of the African continent when it comes to reading, mathematics, and all of these critical studies. When you have that in your system, then you cannot get out of the vicious cycle of underdevelopment within each and every family. When you have most of your population trapped in such deep levels of poverty, propertyless, you cannot have an economy that will grow when 90% of your population doesn't have any kind of property, not even land. Those are the structural problems. And a lot of times when we speak about structural crisis facing the economy, neoliberals think that we must deregulate the labor market more, we must reduce the taxes, and all of that. Those things are in the periphery.
Mr. Vavi, my humble apologies. I have to come in there. We have run out of time. So much to discuss, so little time. We thank you very much indeed, though, for your take. We got a good sense of what we were talking about. For those who we didn't get, we're going to take your comments, going to post it on our socials as well. Thank you, digital audience, for your participation. Here's my take. I have to give you my take with regards to what we're dealing with. Workers' Day, commemorating the working class. It's a day that orientated or originated within the historical struggles of workers and their trade unions. You heard them. No doubt, this country has a vibrant and brave history. Unemployment, inequality, and job creation, as always, high on the Workers' Day agenda. The question still remains, how can we as citizens, best contribute to the development of a growing South African economy. There's still so much to do together to advance the interests of workers and politicians, as well as other stakeholders. You saw them here. They know all too well. You don't want to play with legitimate pain, legitimate fear, legitimate frustration. You want to speak to it, and you want to have a countermeasure that makes people feel included and empower them. It's about command. It's about ability to get something done. It's about the sense of urgency, problems and solutions. It all boils down, my brothers and sisters, to giving you and your family a better life. It is about human dignity, equality and freedom, democratic values enshrined in the Bill of Rights. After all, for many, this day is a reminder that workers' rights are indeed human rights. That's my point of view. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. The Globe is up next. We'll speak to you next week, Sunday. Take care. Bye-bye.